So one of the difficulties about being in education and working with AI is most districts and schools and government agencies are trying to figure out how to manage all of this, right? When you have large corporations like Elon Musk and Microsoft and other people saying, hey, we need to shut this down. We need to stop this for 6 months. We need to figure out what really can happen. Generally, especially, when you work with kids and students, we tend to be cautious, and I'm not against that, right? I love the idea of like, hey, let's make it safe for kids. Let's figure out what we're working for. But I do feel like the answer right now is just to stop everything and block everything instead of exploring and using it in a positive way. So super excited. We're gonna have a guest jump in here in a couple minutes and get everything rolling that way. But that'll be kind of a theme that we have moving forward with this. I want to grab somebody that's been using a tool and to be honest, more proficient in it than I am. And so in the next couple of weeks, we'll have some people jump in. So one of the things that I wanted to share last week, but I didn't have time to, was a new prompt that I've been kind of working through. And it's not that hard of a prompt. It's just what it means and what it brings to a brand new teacher, a struggling teacher, or a veteran teacher who maybe needs a little push in a different direction. And so if I pull this up, I have it pulled up. Let me just share my second screen. And we can go from there. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the entire prompt, right? So there's 100 answers, right? So I got like 40, 55 of them, and then I had to continue with the list above. So then I get a continuation of that prompt. But the prompt was pretty simple, right? It was give me 100 ChatGPT prompts for a first-year teacher who is struggling and wants to get better. So I feel like as a first-year teacher and a first-year coach and a first-year, administrator, both as an assistant principal and a principal, there's all these things that you're learning, but then there's also all of these things that you don't know. And then outside of those things that you don't know, there's things that you don't even know, and you can't even ask the questions to find out that information about. And so when I was looking at this prompt, what I was actually looking at is a series of trainings or PD or a document that I could give brand new teachers at my building or in other buildings ideas to think about. And this is not like, hey, brand new, you're starting class next week. This is kind of well thought out and put out there. So the idea of this document is that they can take the teachers, right? And the beautiful thing about this is when you look at some of the answers, right, and some of these prompts that ChatGPT gives you, these are not just for first-year teachers, right? These are for experienced teachers. And let me jump over here and see if I can a little bit bigger, right? A little bit smaller than that, so we can get one on each page, right? What strategies can help me maintain a work-life balance as a new teacher, right? So if I were to grab this prompt, and this is the purpose of this prompt is going to lead to other answers. So if I copy and paste that, and I just come back into a new chat here, and I'm going to use 4. It's a little bit faster, gives me a little bit more data behind that. And I'm just going to copy that prompt in to ChatGPT, and it's going to give me probably 10 main points. So it's going to rephrase my question. It's going to talk about the importance of maintaining this, work-life balance, which we all work towards and want to have and go from there. But you'll see that it's going to start listing these ideas. So if I'm an administrator, right, I don't necessarily in that moment when a teacher, whether brand new or old or right, whatever, comes to me and asks me for help with something, I might not even have all the ideas or all the answers. I can actually go down this list, grab that prompt, throw it in, throw it out to a teacher and say, hey, this is what I've come up with. Why don't we start with one of these? What do you think would be, a good thing, right? So when we look at these, you can see it's still going to keep typing as I'm going through this. Prioritize self-care, set boundaries, both with the people that you work with your students' parents. When can they call, when they can reach out to you, learn to say no, plan ahead and stay organized, delegate and collaborate, focus on efficiency, seek support, reflect and adjust, make time for personal interests, and be patient, right? So if I'm a brand new teacher, these all make sense to me, right? But I might not have those ideas in my head when I'm asking that question. So this is just one, right? So there's 100 of these that will give you basically 1,000 little data points or little tiny micro goals, if you want, that you could share out with teachers. And this doesn't always have to be a teacher, right? You could plug in at the very beginning a first-year college student, a first-year psychologist, a first-year whatever. So this prompt really can be put in for anything: a first-year middle schooler, a first-year high schooler, first-year principal, first-year assistant principal. I haven't even gone down that road, right? Because my goal really is to help teachers get better. So that's one of the prompts that I've been working on over the past week and a half or so. I'm actually going to end up publishing this on my website and going from there. And so that's something that I'll share on the website. You can follow that there. Looks like we got Stewart on. We're waiting for the camera to get hooked up and everything, and then we'll go. I'm excited about this because using AI, what I wanted to do was I wanted to create the bios using ChatGPT or 3.5 or 4 or some other AI tool. And so we're going to play around with that and go with that once we get the camera hooked up and everything like that. So the other prompt that I wanted to share is right here, number 18. I had it marked. So if I take this, right, how can I use data to inform my instructional decisions? If you think, or if you feel like every college student that's coming out into the teaching field knows the answers to all these questions, right? That's impossible. They're not going to know them all. And so when you talk about data, right, and if they're on a PLC team and they're bringing their curriculum together, they're giving, common formative assessments or CFAs, depending on what you call them, and then they want to come back and look at the data, and then they want to say, hey, you taught it this way, I taught it this way, or I missed this. Your kids did much better on this question than my kids did on this question. Why don't we flip the class, right? And you teach them and I'll reteach, or I'll do the activity or whatever. A lot of teachers don't know how to look at the data to make instructional decisions. So if I grab this prompt, right, and I throw it in, and I can just throw it at the bottom just so it continues on. When I throw that prompt in, it's going to basically answer this prompt. And again, it will give you a summary. You can watch this going live. If you've never used ChatGPT before, this is what happens. You basically plug in a prompt and it is live dictating that prompt to you. And so obviously you got to collect the data, right? So I'm not going to necessarily go over everything, but as it's spitting out this information, again, these are ideas and resources that you can give to teachers, students, right? If you're in the college and you're training teachers, this is potential teachers that are in college or doing their student teaching, how to use data to inform their classroom. Hopefully that's not alone on an island. One of the things I've shared before, as a first-year teacher, I was a co-teacher, so I had another adult special ed teacher in my classroom the entire time. And I felt like I grew leaps and bounds because I was getting immediate feedback all the time from another veteran teacher. And I did that for 3 years. Each one of those first 3 years, I had a different teacher. The joke is that nobody could work with me, so they had to give me a new teacher every year. But the idea of getting instant feedback as a teacher is great. So when younger teachers are looking for data and how to use it, yeah, they might have done a practicum or done one unit on data, or looking at information from their college class and then analyzing that and moving forward. But that's not the same as taking 180 or 30 kids and using that data to direct instruction live right then. And so that's a practice, right? That takes time. But then there's also the overall part of being a team, a 7th grade language arts team, a 9th grade language arts team, a 4th grade, team that's looking at that data and making changes. So obviously it's going to go through this list. I'm not going to read all of them, but we'll go through the points, right? So we're going to collect the data. We're going to analyze the data. We're going to look at that, and then we're going to set goals according to that data, and then we'll adjust instruction. I think one of the things that's really difficult for new teachers as they're going through this is the idea of, I have all of these standards I have to get through, and they plan out their whole year without adding any additional open days or reteach time. So if you're a teacher and you collect this data and your kids don't get something, typically, and I don't want to say typically, but a lot of teachers will just move on. Hey, we don't have time to recover. We don't have time to go over this. We don't have time to reteach this. We don't have time to assess this. We don't have time to reassess this. And that's not a good practice, right? Just moving on for a time's sake is not a great idea when you can reassess and adjust on the fly. And that's part of being on a great PLC team, is you can do that, right? Obviously, it's talking about SMART goals here, and then you want to adjust the instruction. You want to monitor the progress of your students. If you're not using this year's data on this year's kids to make adjustments, what are you doing? Right? I mean, like, we don't analyze a football game the week after the football game and go from there, right? What we do is we adjust and we go live at that point. So anyway, use technology tools, maintain confidentiality. I'm going to share this whole list on the website here. And now I'm going to, I love this. So I typed in, he's going to hate this, right? So let's welcome Stewart on, and then I'm going to read the bio because this is going to be great. So let me stop sharing the screen here. So how are you, Stewart?
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited that you're here. Oh my gosh, I love the new office you have. This is fantastic. A climbing wall for your
part
kids
of the
and all that
problem.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Change of venue, so we just roll with it.
You just roll with it, right?
Yeah.
So all of these loud noises are my offspring. Those of you that don't know, I have 7 kids, and so my house is always loud. So to find a quiet place doesn't happen. So I asked ChatGPT to write a brief summary about Stewart Hudnall, and this is going to lead into something because we've already talked about this. But let me read it. Did you already read it?
Maybe.
Okay, here we go.
No, not the recent one.
Okay, well, this is the one I sent you originally, and this will be great because we can talk about problems and truth and accurate information when it comes out in ChatGPT. So Stewart Hudnall is a well-known educator and advocate for mental health and wellness. He currently serves as an assistant principal at Bingham High School in Utah, where he is responsible for student discipline and school safety. In addition to his administrative duties, Hudnall is also a certified master trainer for HopeSquad, a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program for schools. Hudnall is a passionate advocate for healthy choices and is particularly concerned about the dangers of vaping among young people. He has been vocal about the risks of e-cigarettes and works tirelessly to educate students and parents about the dangers of vaping. And can I say nationally recognized? Nationally recognized.
Sure.
I added
Stretch.
that part. He has also been a strong advocate for mental health services in schools and has worked to expand access to counseling and support service for students. That is another conversation for another day, because I know that there's a whole episode talking about mental health and vapes. Prior to his role as assistant principal at Bingham High School, Hudnall served as a teacher and coach at various schools throughout Utah. He is a graduate of Brigham Young University and holds a master's degree in educational leadership from Southern Utah University. Now, some of those things are true and some of those things are not true. Which of those things, again, I mean, I know him really well. Which of those things are true?
Well, I mean, it stretches it, right? It just finds things online and pulls it. And like, we know everything online isn't true.
That's true. We don't.
Yeah. So I did not attend Brigham Young University.
Okay. What about Southern Utah University?
No, I didn't. Neither of those schools.
So you graduated from UVU, which is where I graduated from, and then you also Utah State, correct?
Yeah, not even close to what it said I did.
Well, and it's funny because a master's from Utah State, other than a PhD, is probably one of the best degrees you can get out of the state of Utah as far as education is concerned. But so we're going to talk a little bit about education AI. That's why you're here, right? That's why you're watching. But the idea of bringing on other people to talk about some of the things that they're working through, Stuart and I have different roles, but similar in the sense that we're administrators. He sees more of the day-to-day action as far as behavior goes and works with kids. I currently am a principal of a virtual school, so I don't see a lot of my kids in person, but we're doing more outreach and home visits to get kids active and things like that. So with ChatGPT, let's talk a little bit about this. You've been playing around with this for probably 4 or 5 months, since both of us have, since it first came out. As far as accuracy, I don't know if we can pin a percentage point on it, but what are the things that you would recommend as far as accuracy coming out of ChatGPT or any of these other these AI tools, whether it's Bing or ChatGPT or, Jasper or some of those other things?
I think we're going to find people getting in trouble because they'll just copy it straight from the AI because it sounds intelligent and it looks good, but in reality, the information isn't always correct. And I'm actually interested for the first time when a news article, someone will catch that it was written by AI and they have to backpedal from it. I know there was a situation where that happened with a university back east. They had a mass email sent out after, I think it was the death of a student actually, and they had chat AI write it, and somehow someone caught it, got flagged, and then they had to backpedal as saying, "Oh, sorry, that you're right, it isn't personalized because it came from an AI instead of actual people within the area."
Well, I mean, and talking about email, I mean, what percentage of our email is not real, authentic, right? I mean, and I'm talking about shopping, sports, news. I mean, I know that there are people writing it, but there's online editing tools now that add different verbs to make things more exciting. We have programs in, even WordPress, right? Has things where you can do word changing and stuff like that. You're right. It'll be interesting to see, right? And it'll be interesting to see if it's a big paper, right? Like the Boston Globe or like the New Yorker or the New York Times. And I don't imagine some of those because they're like historic for being like so kind of over the top on their sources and making sure everything's correct. But you're right. It's going to happen, right? The funny thing about it is, so thinking about, do you remember when Wikipedia first came out?
Oh yeah, teachers were up in arms.
Yeah, teachers were extremely upset about Wikipedia. And now, because there are so many people using it, Wikipedia has become a primary source, right? You can use Wikipedia because down at the bottom, they give you the source and you can say, oh, hey, this is the source that I'm going to. But there's so many people using it and adjusting it that when mistakes show up, and this is free, right? People do this for free, is they go in and they change it back to the truthful statement or the data.
But who's doing that with AI other than the programmers possibly on the back end? It's not as easy to say, "Oh, you were wrong." You can give it a little feedback when it gives you an answer, but it's not as simple as Wikipedia where someone can just click and
change it. No, you're right. Yeah. You're right.
So I'm curious to see. It might develop faster just because AI, futuristic, right? What is it going to do? I don't know. But how do I tell the AI, I didn't go to BYU? Like you were wrong there.
Right.
Even though I do have blue, this is not BYU blue.
Right. It's Bingham blue.
Clarify.
It's Bingham blue. So thoughts on anything else with that as far as accuracy, truthfulness, like sources, different things like that?
Well, and not only accuracy, my first experience with Chat GPT or AI in general in the school setting actually came because a paper a student turned in was too good, too accurate, too well done, in the sense that it was an English teacher, it was an English class.
Right.
The teacher read it and he knew, obviously, this wasn't the same level this kid had been turning in all year. Right. But you try and confront a kid, they're just going to say, no, I did it. Well, when he read through it, he realized the use of the comma was perfect in that paper. Every single time that comma was used or should have been used, it was dead on. And so what the teacher did is he pulled up previous assignments and current assignment and said, hey, did you learn commas? Like, how come all of a sudden there was a shift of not using commas, not understanding commas, to perfect commas? And at that point, the student was like, "All right, fine, yeah, it was AI. That's on me."
How did the teacher handle it, and did it make it up to administration or?
It never made it up to administration because the kid just owned it, and at that point, he was like, "Yep, I did it." Parents didn't fight it either, so it never got escalated to an administrator. But it could have. He was just sharing it as an example, as AI was when the Chat GBT became public and people could start using it. That's when we started getting concerns, and that was our first experience because I mean the user base just grew so fast for it.
Right. And so, I mean, that actually, I'm going to share the screen again because that leads us to something that this is when I saw this, it was kind of like mind blowing. And I'm not really trying to exaggerate. I just like, I'm a tech child, right? So I've been like part of the tech generation, cell phones. Like when I was in high school, nobody had them. When I was in college, most people had them. Then when I was done with college, everybody had them. So there's this image. So let me see if I can share the screen again. And so what we're looking at is, and these are not all of the technologies, right? But these are 10 pretty 3, 6, 8, 9, 8 technologies that we use for the most part on a daily basis, and how long it took them to get to 100 million users. So 100 million users, basically 1 out of every 3 people in the United States, right? So that's, I mean, that's a rough estimate of that. So if you look down at the bottom, Uber comes out in 2009, which has been 14 years since that's come out. When you think about it out loud, it's like Uber's been around for 14 years. It's like, well, yes, it has, but not in the way that we know it of being Uber, right? Now they've got food delivery, grocery delivery. Every airport now is building their airport to accommodate Uber and Lyft and rideshare programs. Anyway, we got Telegram, which I've never used. Spotify, obviously, which is, basically it was a huge competitor for Apple Music
Pandora.
and YouTube Music and Pandora. And that's a tool that I use that, right? I pay for it every month and I use it. Pinterest has been around since 2010. Instagram 2010 came out right around the same time. And it's been interesting to watch those two grow, but grow separately in different ranges. 30 months for Instagram. Pinterest was 41 months. WhatsApp came out. That was 14 months. So about a year.
I wonder if that's because it had a huge international base with WhatsApp,
right,
versus some of the other ones where they were more, at least initially, US based.
It's true. I mean, I haven't really thought about it. I don't use WhatsApp. I know a lot of people do, but the idea of texting internationally without dealing with the different kind of phones and whatever, you could just go through the app, right? I mean, I know there's a lot more than that. There's other apps on here that I haven't seen, but so TikTok, right? TikTok is 4, 3, 7 years. I mean, it wasn't originally TikTok. I think it was originally like Musically or something like that. And then it got changed to TikTok. And that was 9 months. Chat GPT, I think, got released in just November was for the beta, or October was the beta, and November was when it went live. They've hit 100 million people in 2 months, 60 days. So close to 1.5 million people signing up every day. Which is crazy. And it's just getting more intense with every level that it goes, as far as like going from 3.5 to 4. I look at where Uber was in 2009, Spotify was in 2008, Instagram was in 2010, 2012. What is Chat GPT and others like it? I'm not just saying Chat GPT, right? Because they're all running off this kind of similar interface. Where is it going to be in 4 years, 10 years? What is it going to look like?
Well, and how's it going to change the face of everything we do? People have likened it, right, to social media or internet or something that large. When you go back 25 years, the education system is completely different. And those are conversations we have with teachers that, sure, you might teach history and that worksheet you used 25 years ago, it's still the same information, but the teaching has to change. If you teach the same way you did 25 years ago, there's issues. And for better or for worse, times have changed.
It's interesting that you point that out, right? Because I think about even with electronic grading, right? Or the infusion of digital grading. I mean, so digital grading started like maybe 2 years after I started teaching, or 2 years before I came in and we were digitally grading. There were still teachers though that refused to give up their grade books because they wanted it to be precise and they wanted to track everything, right? Um, I mean, I don't think I ever lost a grade digitally. I did not keep a manual grade book. I don't know if you did, but
Never.
and then along with that, I saw the entire rise of um, cell phones with students in school. So when I first was a teacher, most families could not afford a cell phone for their middle schooler. Like maybe their high schooler had one, but their middle schooler didn't, or it was just the Razor, which was a big phone, right? And those are the families that had money, which was that Razor, right?
Yeah.
Because it would play music and you customize your ringtones. Um, but the Chromebook, right? The Chromebook and what that did for education, whether or not that was good or bad. We are currently now a district of 1-to-1. Not every school has 1-to-1, but the idea that every student has a mobile computer or a laptop to use whenever they need it is mind blowing, right?
Well, and on top of that, I mean, it goes probably a little to the socioeconomic of where I work. We did a school-wide survey just 2 days ago, and we're not 1-to-1 yet. We will be next year, but we had Chromebook carts in place for students to use, and we found that over half just use their phones to do the survey. They didn't even use the Chromebook for it. I have many students that will tell me they type faster on their phone than they do on a keyboard. And so they'll write their papers out actually on their cell phone in a Google Doc.
That's insane. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be. But
Yeah.
I no, that's crazy. So I think with that, what you talked about too is accessibility.
Mhm.
So it brings into question if a student's family, and again, I'm assuming that at some point ChatGPT and a lot of other AI things are going to be unlocked, right? Schools will unlock them at some point, whether for students or teachers. But if I have a student who has full connectivity at home and the parents can afford to pay for the ChatGPT 6 or 7 version that comes out to get instant feedback on a paper that they're writing, or to be honest, to have the paper written for them or whatever, right? What kind of um, socioeconomic problem does this create as far as access to information to data, information to resources? I currently work in a situation where we're giving out wireless hotspots to kids still. Like, so we did that during COVID, but there was a lot of families that they realized like, oh, we need this in our house. And so we provide that for the school, for school to the families, because they don't necessarily have internet at home. Right. I keep pulling up my phone because I'm looking at notes just so we're there. So I want to stay on track. I think the other part too is, and the question I wanted to ask you, right? So we work in the same district, and this is not about just our district. This is district schools, and I talked about a little bit at the beginning, all over the country. Historically, education is a very reactionary field. We stop everything and say, no, 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 until we see what it's going to look like. And then we gradually jump in. And a lot of times we're too late after we jump in. Like our kids are behind. So, for example, one of the things for me, and I'm not saying just, is I felt like public education was behind the coding program for a while. Like instead of doing keyboarding, I thought students should be learning how to code and write code, whether it was block or scratch or, all these little things. Now I think they're getting better, and the elementary schools are teaching coding along with keyboarding and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff wasn't happening until middle school or high school, which I think by that time is too late um, to be using. I don't know. What do you think about everything just being no and then open up later?
Well, the fear always is the unknown and, liability and being on the hook. And with AI, right, there's possibly inappropriate stuff um, that it can generate with its responses. There's security concerns because it's pulling information in, it's learning from it. Even just the old school distraction, right? Like we can't have distractions, and chat GPT is going, or AI is just going to be a distraction. How can we control it where we can show what kids are accessing or not accessing? Um, and then finally, like there's a lot of privacy concerns we have to worry about at a school level. And how do we ensure that chat GBT or any AI um, is staying compliant with those? That's going to be the most difficult part, I think.
Right. Well, and you brought it up, right? The part is, I mean, and I agree with parts of this, right? There are parts that if you release it too late, people will figure it out before the people that are supposed to have it figured out, right?
Yeah.
And it's like we said, right? Kids are already using this, and some teachers have no idea what it is. Like, I mean, I know we've had PDs about it, and they're like, but they don't know how to check, they don't know how to run it, and part of it is it'll get to a tipping point in my mind where it's being used so much that teachers will just stop saying, hey, I'm gonna do this writing project, or it needs to be done live in class, right? Or they'll start to like put these things on it. But when we talk about the safety, I mean, there are some major, and I would imagine they're already out there, right? I haven't looked for them, but if you can create, I mean, there was the movie Her, I think, where what's the main character? Joaquin Phoenix, right? Falls in love with this AI person, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if if AI or the engineer can engineer a video model and a visual model, we could potentially get to the point where people are creating her, right? Not just the digital voice that begins to understand somebody that nobody else does. And I can totally see people falling in love with an
Well,
AI
and
generated, video
it's already
generated,
happening.
right?
There's articles I've been reading lately about there were AI that people were basically using as a boyfriend or girlfriend, and they were chatting with them, texting with them back and forth, back and forth. One lady went so far as to marry the AI guy that she was texting back and forth with. Um, However, they ran an update, one of this biggest AI people
Right.
groups, and removed some of the more explicit stuff that could potentially be done. And so all of a sudden, these significant others,
Relationships, right?
yeah, are now very sterile. And if they tried going down that route, they would come back and say, oh, let's not talk about that. And so they
Oh,
felt like their relationship was torn apart, and it was all by an update done by technology.
right. Well, I mean, we'll see more of that. Okay, so to stick with kind of where we talked about and timeline wise, um, do you have the ability? Can you share your screen like down at the bottom? Can you, if you remember right? So if we
I
go,
am on a cell phone doing
oh,
this.
okay, all right, no, you're fine. Okay, so
Tech
we can talk
problems.
about it, which is fine, and I can try and run it up if you want. Um, what currently is your favorite prompt that you feel like has helped you in your administrative position? And if there's more than one, that's fine. Like we can talk about it.
So for me, it's not a specific prompt. It's more of the model with the prompt. Like you mentioned in your episode last week, is everyone started out with simple, just asking it a question like you did with a search engine.
Right.
You just ask it one layer of question. And then once, I don't know, smarter people than me started understanding and realizing what they could do, they then started adding different layers to it where it would tell them to start with one way and then they would add to it. Um, and so for me, it's more of a model, not of a specific one. One of the best ones I found,
So this
it's
is
a 5-step formula. Go
okay. So
ahead.
those of you, yeah, those of you that are watching, right, that are the model, right? So the idea is that we've gone from prompts to models, and a model is like a theoretical framework of how you ask a question. So a simple model would be, who's my audience, who's my target, and do I want to be, what's the voice that I want it to come from? So it'd be like, I need an expert opinion on creating PD for teachers, right? So I have an expert opinion, my audience is my teachers, and then what I want is the model. Now there's a lot more complex models, and I think Stewart's going to share them. We're going to have a whole episode on models, but I need to do more research because there's models now that are going in and coming out so fast that it's hard to keep up with all of the models that are available. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah, well, and some of it's interesting, right? Like they're starting to call a lot of them formulas because you can tweak it so many different ways and how you build it. So for example, one of the ones that I've been using probably the most, right? You have your context, your task, what you're having them do, the instructions for it,
I'm going to write
clarity,
these in the so this is
then
context,
task,
ask,
instruction, clarify, clarity,
and then outcome.
Yeah.
And then you refine that after you get your first result, right?
Yeah, right. There's the ones where it's you simulate the persona, like who are the person that you're targeting or you want them to act like. What do you want them to do? What are the steps they need to do within that? What are either the context of this question or the constraints you want them to do? What's the goal? My favorite always is, because I have a more what's the word? Less strict or refined type of talking and writing. And so I always like to refine it by making it use more natural expressive language, or have it do it in a witty tone, or have it do in a humorous tone. Because that's just normally how I write. I don't write very proper, maybe for lack of a better word. And so sometimes it'll spit something out and I'm like, that doesn't sound anything like I would use. And so I can go through and change it myself. But also what I like to do is tell it to go back and redo it to fix it, if that makes sense.
Right. So, I mean, looking at what people are doing, so the first huge push that came out was like, hey, here's prompts that you can use. Then there's this idea of like, okay, now there's models that you can use. And now I feel like, and I'm not quite into the, I mean, I've been reading about models. I've gone to a couple presentations where they're talking about the model, right? This is how you get the best result, where you can have it. I shared one last week, the one I really liked. Let me get back here and see if okay. So the prompt was, and I don't want to share on my screen, but it was classroom management and behavior management. For the above topic, write multiple perspectives from a group with different viewpoints. For each perspective, write it in their own voice using phrases that this person would use. So then it gave me 5 answers, one from an experienced teacher, one from a new teacher, one from a parent, one from a student, and one from an administrator. So really what we got is we got this prompt that was surrounded by all of the possible, and I don't say all of them, right? It didn't have an aide or a secretary or custodian, but it got a lot of stakeholders giving me information about this prompt. And so after models, so we've got prompts, models, and now what a lot of people are doing is they're actually engineering back-end stuff to actually run better versions of ChatGPT for specific purposes, whether that's lesson plans. So that's like engineering, right? You're engineering the back end. And it's happening so fast, it's really hard to keep up. And that's really part of why I want to do this kind of weekly thing, is to stay up to date on different things. Like I was on Twitter this morning and there was a new one called Auto GPT, and it's an auto task running thing that will run without you there based on the parameters that you give it, constantly running. Obviously you have to have your computer open and run it and use some other tools. But so when you talk about your model of context, task, instruction, clarity, outcome, what are some of the things that you're looking at? Are you looking from a personal, like your role as an assistant principal, as a father, as kind of an entrepreneur? Like, what are you looking at as far as those items?
Well, a lot of it just depends what I need to get done. It depends the different hat that I'm putting on is, how I'll use ChatGPT. even sometimes my wife, she's in a social work class at college right now. She'll ask me a question and I'll throw it in chat GBT just to see what it gives me. Um, I like it to help organize my thoughts and kind of help me know where I want to get with it and find that clarity that I'm looking for. And that really has been helpful for me.
Okay. The next question I was going to ask you, and I think this might be like a standard question that I ask everybody. We'll see, depending on how you answer it goes. If you were to go back in the classroom today, so let's say you're a teacher teaching 6 periods a day, what would the implementation of this look like? And this is a 2-part question for you individually, but then also for your students as producers and consumers of technology. That was a longer question, but
No, I know what you mean. So my answer would kind of be twofold, where I taught a graphic design class. That was about half my schedule.
okay.
I would love to play with the AI art and mixing that in with the Photoshop and Illustrator that I taught and really diving deep into the digital art with AI, I think would be fascinating. So I would have a whole section tomorrow in my digital media class about AI art, how to refine it, how to make it work, what does it look like, the ethics of it. I know there's a lot going on in the art world of someone turned in AI art and won. And so then people were up in arms saying, wait a second, he didn't create that. But then he said, no, I did, because I created the prompts that got the picture.
Right.
So I am the creator, which opens a whole nother ballgame. So I think that would be really fascinating for a digital media type of class. With my financial lit, my business class, my entrepreneurship classes, I would love it because it could give you a really solid foundation. Just like you showed last episode about developing that professional development for teachers, you could do the same with your business model, right? You can have a kid that really has kind of a pie in the sky or hazy idea, and he can use the feedback back and forth with the chat to try to refine his business model, see what it looks like, get feedback from it. And so you could use it to engage the students, I think, better across the board. And just like teachers, our job is to help refine and to help with the thinking, not necessarily in the memorization or sometimes even in the creation. It really just depends what subject we're at. And so I think it could really be a strong tool in those areas. I would also love to deep dive on the teacher side of how to help it grade, especially if I was an English teacher.
Right.
You know, we could submit it and it would definitely do all the grammar. I wouldn't even have to worry about grammar as an English teacher, because it would automatically do that. And that isn't subjective. That can be black and white.
Right.
And that can give immediate feedback.
Depending on which Oxford dictionary or if you're doing MLA or APA. No, I've thought about this a lot, right? But I mean, you could throw that in. I mean, there's already tools. As a teacher, I use that as a teacher. Okay, I don't want to interrupt you. Okay, so that would be the student side.
But as a teacher, I would want to figure out ways to have a grade for me, because grading can be effective, and there are times when you need to give that constructive feedback or you need to have those dialogue conversations. But maybe it's because some of my classes were project-based. I found more of that was actually happening in the classroom during the class, as they were creating things and as they were developing things, not necessarily when they turned in an assignment, right? Like that.
Right.
It depends. It depends on what it is. It can go both ways.
Right. Well, and the idea, and I don't ask this question to answer, I mean, is the things that you brought up. I mean, I used a tool called Utah Compose, right? Which was every English teacher had access to it. Kids would turn in a paper and it would screen it through grammar. And I told the kids, right, I'm not your editor. You need to come with me with a base model that is actually like accurate. It's got capitalizations, your periods, your commas, your parentheses, like your quotation marks, all of those things need to be in the right place. Then I will go through, and really what I'm looking at is more of transitions, your thought process, your argument, like what makes this a good argument. Yeah. The more time I spend correcting your periods and punctuation that can already be done automatically now, that's less time that I can give you real feedback on the type of things that you need, right? And in all truthfulness, I'm not a grammarian, right? I became an English teacher because I love to read. I love to write too, but it was anyway. So I think
Well, and I think it can use to help clarify ideas, right? Where it's not just the grammar, but like Grammarly does, that feels very AI-esque, where it'll say, hey, this sentence, you wrote it this way, but if you rewrite it this way, you're going to have a clearer sentence.
Right. Right. And the idea behind that, right? The why this is more clear than this one, using these words is more clear than this one. No, I really like that. I think the business model, I mean, if you're on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram, people are actually saying, hey, ChatGPT, I have $1,000. I want to earn $30,000 in the next 6 months. I'm going to do whatever you say. Let's run through a business model. Here's my idea. And they're basically following what ChatGPT says. And it's been interesting to watch some of those people like either completely lose all their money and just, they're doing, they have the money to spend, but they're experimenting on how far AI could go to help you start a business. And one of the big things that I think any of these tools are it's Adam Grant, right? We talked about this so earlier when we read this book in a book study. So here's what I know, right? Let's see if I can hold this. So here's what I know is this inside circle. Here's what I know I don't know. But then there's this whole world outside of this circle. I don't even know what I don't know. And that's what I love about the prompts, because they will think of things that you haven't thought about. And the pathway is not even there in your brain, right? Like it's not even there to process. So I love the idea of taking you to places that you haven't been, right? And at least in my mind. Yeah. Okay. So the last question. So we talked about producers and consumers. Where do you see, like, let's talk about like currently, I think currently right now, you and I both are maybe consumers of it. We're not necessarily producing a ton with it. I mean, I'm starting to do more things and kind of create things and putting it out. And we have a group of people that we communicate with. How do we shift from being just consumers of it to producers where we're helping solve problems? And again, this isn't just ChatGPT. This is anything ChatGPT does, but all of the other tools like Jasper, the art one. What was it? I shared a bunch last week. I have a whole list of them, but I think it's a mindset thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Just like, so one of my favorite books, it's called Future Driven, and at least education books. And it talks about how schools need to stop being a time capsule and need to be a time machine. They need to be gearing up and getting students ready for things that don't exist. Like you mentioned previously, there's now a job that earns 6 figures easy that didn't exist 5 months ago.
I know, it's mind-boggling. And other people that have taken this and created jobs out of it. There's a guy that I follow on Twitter who now has got about 100,000 followers. He set up a website, created models in an engineering basically class in Kajabi actually, and is charging $800 for it. And he's already got 4,000 or 5,000 people that want to take his class. And he just let out and said, I am going to research. Now he had some background knowledge that probably most of us don't have, which made his acceleration faster. But it's been fascinating to kind of watch other people do this. So anyway, go. So the time machine's moving forward.
Yeah. Where the focus of the time capsule is the past, where if our kids have the same education that we had, then we failed them, because the world we grew up in is completely different than the world that we're in today.
Right. I think about your two big strengths that we talked about at the very beginning. This will kind of circle back to the very beginning. I think about a vape or a illegal drug class that we have at our district that's taught by a human being and a person. All of that could be moved online and kids could take that course digitally, and then that person could be used to help those kids that are in severe like addiction mode where they need to get over addiction or different things like that. And I think about not that you don't want a real person, but you can have preliminary screenings or pre-screenings from an AI tool, which we're not doing right now. We give a survey out that kind of helps us understand where kids are at, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about school. Do they feel connected with the school? But this idea of these plans, sorry, my camera's turned out, but these ideas of these plans that can be put in place to help students that are struggling with how they feel about themselves, how they feel connected to the school. And I'm not saying replace the humans, right? But the screening ability of where are these kids at on a level 1 to 10, honestly, based on their answers, right? I mean, because these are language tools, they can analyze language. And this goes into Jordan Peterson, right? Your authoring program, self-authoring program, where you start writing about yourself and then you discover who you are. Well, AI could give you these ideas of who you could become and who you are. And there's a lot of different things that I see it doing besides just writing, funny dad jokes and bedtime stories for my kids and other stuff like that. So, okay. I'm going to give you the final word, final thoughts on AI and education, and we'll just sign off when you've shared your moments.
I actually am really excited for it because internet changed education drastically, and I see AI doing that, where no longer did they have to go to an encyclopedia. They could go to the internet, much bigger ideas that they could go with instead of being confined to the Encyclopedia Britannica, where now AI, I don't even know where it's going to go. I can't even predict it, but it's going to take us places where kids are going to be involved, not just in regurgitating facts or writing an essay, which there is value in writing an essay, but going deeper into that, much more reasoning based instead of just spewing out facts. So I for one am really excited to see where AI takes education.
Okay. Awesome, brother. Thank you for watching this episode of AI and Education. If you're here, it's most likely because you're an educator, and what you do every day for kids matters. I know sometimes that might not feel like it based on however your day went today, and really, truly what you do matters for kids. I certainly love you. I can't speak for Stewart. I'm sure he loves you wherever you're at watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next episode.
See ya.